is being recorded.
I didn't mean to record that on the phone too. I'm sorry, y'all who might be listening in to the podcast, but welcome to Something Positive for Positive People. I'm Courtney Brain. Something Positive for Positive People is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that supports people navigating herpes stigma. And the way that we do this is through the podcast. The podcast is the go-to educational resource where people get to live or hear from the lived experiences of people who have herpes, date someone living with herpes, or people in the sexuality education, medical field, mental health professionals who can offer various perspectives in the form of support. We also advocate to integrate these lived experiences into sexuality education so that we can best support STI prevention efforts. And we call this stigma minimization, which at this point in time, by the time this podcast is out, we'll probably have like a little logo or something. We're in the process of making some shirts, some hats, because we've trimmed the edges of what Something Positive for Positive People is. Right now it's the podcast as a support tool. We use this for research to support STI prevention efforts by tying it in with sexuality education. And then we train medical professionals and healthcare providers on minimizing stigma in their practice and being able to educate from a place of people's lived experiences rather than the inaccuracies of what we see when you do a Google search and we see all those inconsistent stats and things like that. So all that said, that's where we are now. We have some events coming up. You can visit the events tab of SPFPP.org for more on that. And as I mentioned in the previous episode, and I probably will in a few others, I am Courtney, stepping into more men's emotional wellness through Self. So getselfed.org and getselfed on Instagram are going to be where you can find me speaking more to men's emotional wellness and a lot of those resources. Yeah, that's all we got. All right, so for the podcast episode that you're sitting in on right now and listening to or watching, one, you might notice that I'm wearing the same shirt from the previous episode. These are recordings that are done in the same day. So we had Dr. Nas before, and here now we have Lindsay. Lindsay is someone that I connected with, wow, it was years ago. Was it 2019? It was 3 years ago? 4 years ago? It was like 4, maybe, something like that. All right. Well, you can unmute and talk too. Like, you ain't got to stay muted.
Yeah.
How long ago was that?
I think it was I've been, if it's based around Alex's relationship, it was before that. So it's at least 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So 4 years ago. All right. So let me tell y'all why I'm so excited about this interview. All right. So let me start with the least fun. The least fun thing is that Lindsay was someone who helped me with organizing the information that I presented at the Something Positive for Positive People conference. So thank Lindsay for that beautiful set of data that is as accurate as it is, because otherwise I'd have got up there and I'd have been like, this is what these people said. And yeah, alongside Dr. Amber Sophis, her and we all contributed to just cleaning up that data and allowing for it to be presentable enough for the conference. The more exciting thing is that you are now pregnant, and how far along are you?
16 weeks.
16.
Which is
do you count
crazy.
Weeks or do
almost
we,
halfway?
Yeah. Why do we count weeks and not like 4 months? Why wouldn't we say 4 months pregnant?
I think it's because so much changes week to week. And what's so funny is I started this pregnancy process I have a degree in child development. I have a PhD in child development, but I wasn't in the birth or 0 to 3 area. I was 3 to 8, 3 to 9. So I'm so the apps you have, it's the rapid development over even a course of a week. It's you go from I'll use the fruit because that's what they use in the app. It's you go from a pear to an avocado to it's just rapid growth within each week. There's developing ears around 18. I think I should probably double check.
No, that's all right. It's all good.
But there's the vital organs or the placenta, all of that is happening in rapid succession at each week. So I think that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So that was the more exciting thing. So here, and I'm selfish with this because this is the most exciting thing, which was, I remember, this is so funny. I remember I saw a photo of you, and I was on Facebook, I think, and I saw a picture. I was like, who the hell is this? And it was recently, because we reconnected recently, and I went to our messages like, how do I know this person? I was about to unfriend you because I was like, I don't know, like a lot of people that I don't talk to, I'm just unfriending
yes.
now, right? So I was like, who is this? And I saw our message history, and I was like, what? And I scrolled through, I was like, oh, we talked about you having an upcoming disclosure, how to talk about your herpes status with someone. And I think I revisited the conversation and said something to her. I was like, oh, congratulations. And I was like, out of curiosity, would this happen to be the person that you're now married to? And it is.
Yeah, it is.
Ooh, that would have been awkward if it wasn't.
You're like, no, wrong person. I think I was like, reached out to you about this particular one because I was excited about the relationship.
Yeah.
I'd done like a few disclosures before, but I hadn't been like deep in like some of your resources at that point. So yeah.
Okay, talk to me about why this one was so different. Like why was this one so different for you that you had other ones you had no issues disclosing, but this was the one that you decided to reach out about?
I'll like back up even a little further. I had to disclose before, not about HSV, but about HPV. So like I'd already had experience disclosing, well, and I don't think it went well. So yeah, I had, HPV, it's pretty common. It's another one of those that is like highly stigmatized. You don't really understand it. Hard to test for. Actually, you could probably speak more to this. From my understanding, it's hard to test for. And like it's primarily tested for people that have vaginas because it's easy to swab the cervix and have, a pap smear. And so then it's like, and then you do the colposcopy, all the things. So I had an abnormal pap, and I was like, what does that mean? And no one explained it to me. So I was already in the sexual health sphere because I did that. And I remember my first disclosure was like really in the weeds. And I was like, but it's really common, but like, whatever. But it was like very like, and then I discussed it with somebody, and they're like, no, man, you need to be like high level. You need to be like, this is like, that's too much. You don't need to be that deep. Like, be up here. And then, so I'd already had, I don't know if it was a failed disclosure, but it was like not smooth. So then I get over my HPV stigma, and then I find out I have herpes antibodies. First it was HSV2, and then I think shortly after we joked about this, I also now had exposure to HSV1 antibodies. So I'd gotten over this HPV piece, and then I was like, fuck, I have herpes too. Like, what do I do? How do I, like, it was like figuring it all out. And I think at that point I'd been in therapy. I'd been trying to find, I think a lot of it was finding the right people, finding the right partnership, finding somebody that had also done some work. And you might not always find that. You might find somebody that like, and have a successful disclosure with somebody that's just open and curious. But I think that was the biggest difference this time. I had more knowledge. I came in more prepared, and it overlapped with somebody that had a high level of openness and curiosity. And also he was like, oh yeah, isn't that common? I think he was also like unfazed by like, I was like, oh, this is so big. This is so heavy. This is hard to share. And he was like, oh. And I know I told you about like my antiviral journey. We can talk about that too with those conversations, but that was a long-winded.
No, because that's like all the background. So that's perfect. Yeah. And you spoke to one of the more prominent points that I would like to elaborate on more. You mentioned like finding the right people. So it sounds to me like you were having these conversations with the wrong people, to say the least. When we talk about your now husband and how that conversation went, you expressed that there was a level of curiosity, and he was just kind of like more knowledgeable about it. Doesn't everybody have it? It is what it is. And so I'm curious about with some of those like past relationships, like what were some other like hints that maybe these weren't your people compared to this now your husband being your person?
I feel like insecurity and security. Like the difference between, I wouldn't even say I'm secure. I'm much more secure than I was, and like working through insecurities. But he came in without ego, and he was just so very, I don't know, like I don't know how to better describe it. Like there wasn't like I think when somebody has also done the work on themselves, maybe the first step is just being willing to change and evolve, and a desire to be a better version of yourself. I think that's the first step. And then when you find somebody that is in that headspace, then you can see growth. I don't think you need to find somebody that's already figured it all out and is like done growing, because I don't think anybody's done growing. But I think you need to find somebody that is like similarly with you and willing to grow. Also, somebody's mowing the lawn outside, so hopefully it's not getting picked up.
That's nothing compared to the sirens, the horns honking, the screaming, the tires screeching outside my window. So I just mute myself when I hear it coming.
Oh,
so
I got you.
That's not being picked up at all. But you just spoke to what I want to kind of lump underneath availability, emotional availability, or emotional intelligence. Maybe that's not emotional availability, but
maybe it's both. I mean, I think it is like a combination, like this intersection of like being vulnerable, like an openness to being vulnerable. Like if you're navigating a relationship and you're trying to like both be on the same page about what that looks like, and you want it to be like you both have to be willing to be vulnerable, right? Mm-hmm. And then so there is like an emotional availability, and then the other piece is like an emotional intelligence and an empathy. Yeah. And even if you don't know, well, I think like I said, I got lucky finding a partner that had a little bit of a background. I know it's not even normal, maybe, or always the case. And so with these other people that I met, it was like they were still stuck in stigma, and actually it got brought up in breakups before. Like now I have to disclose to future partners because even though I disclosed and was open and they consented, they now had resentment because they're like, great, now I have to tell the next person that I slept with somebody that had herpes or HPV or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to deal with. And speaking to that emotional availability and awareness, openness, right? How are some of the ways, besides from, when we speak about having done the work, I think that's super vague. So I'd like for you to kind of elaborate a little bit more on what some of this emotional availability and intelligence looks like in your current relationship compared to when you were dating or in other relationships, for you to know that this is good and worth having been into.
So there's like the journey that you take in doing the work. I'll explain that. And then the journey that this other person has already like experienced and gone through. Therapy's not for everyone, but anyone that knows me knows if you ask me, hey, do you think I should go? I'm never going to say no. Never. Like I feel like it was a game changer for me. And that's its own process. It's like trying new medications. You have to like go in and start over and figure it out. So I had found an established therapist at the time. Actually, the relationship I was saying before, the one that when it ended, he was upset because he was like, now I have to disclose with other people. That one was very, he liked the idea of me, but he didn't actually like me as a person.
What does that mean?
He had this idealized life of like, he liked my personality. Like I was kind, whatever, all the thing. Like I had these traits that were like lined up well. I was like educated. I was nice. His family liked me. But when it came to like the quirks that made me like I talk during movies, or I ask a lot of questions, or I want to dig deep into conversations, or because I have like high emotional intelligence, whether that come from being a perfectionist or being a people pleaser or just my personality.
Trauma response.
Like, yeah, like I wanted to like I would observe his behaviors and be like, hey, I'm noticing this. Why are you doing that? Like, that was how I was communicating. That's like what was useful to me. That's what was effective to me. And he did this stereotypical, like those of you who've heard of Gottman's Four Horsemen, it was like the stonewalling, where when there was conflict, you like don't talk to somebody for days. And I was like I have a background in psychology. So like borrow from whatever you want. When I found you, I also found all of these like relationship therapists. And so I was like, found people that talk about like attachment theory and found people that talk about like relationship structure. And so I was insecure and had like an anxious, insecure attachment. So when I was being ignored, I was like, I did something wrong. I need to fix it. It was like he wasn't responsible for my reactions, but he was triggering something, whether that was like a childhood memory or reactiveness to my parents or people please, whatever that was. Like when he would stonewall and not talk to me and ignore me for days, it would be like triggering to inner child, right? Like I would be like, oh no, something's really wrong. Whereas now my communication style, when I am engaging in those things like that, Alex is like, okay, yeah, let's dig deeper, or thank you for sharing that with me, or whatever. So all of these things that made me and my communication style, or even like the silly things like talking during movies or being active, like we didn't align in a lot of things that you don't have to have all of the same interests, and you definitely don't have to have the same personality or the same like conflict approaches, but you have to have some sort of alignment. And he just didn't like me. And like even talking to family members, like I would do something very Lindsay-esque and he would like roll his eyes or scoff. Whereas like I don't know, I know you've seen it before. When somebody really likes who they're with, you get annoyed with them. That's inevitable. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you're one of, like, Alex is a fucking angel. So, like, he's like, I've never been that mad at you. I don't think I'm capable of being mad at you. I'm very capable of being mad. Like, it goes away. But, like, I was just constantly put down for being myself. So it was more emotionally draining rather than physically draining, to the point where it was bad enough that I like wasn't interested in any physical intimacy, or it was like making me sick to think about like engaging. And I remember my therapist was like, is it time? Unfortunately for that one, we were living together and I was planning on dumping him, and then COVID hit. And then I was like, I guess I'm just here now. And I was there in that relationship for another 3 months because I was in my PhD. I was trying to keep my head above water. Every week I talked to my therapist. I was like in survival mode and making a plan. So I didn't have him sign my lease, or I was slowly separating like things, or I was like making these like plans for when I finally had the courage to be like, all right, I can't.
How long of a process was there between, all right, I recognize that I don't need to be with this person, and then you actually ending the relationship, that person's out?
Had to be 6 to 8 months. It was long.
That is such a long process.
Long. Yeah. And then after the breakup, he didn't leave the apartment. So there was also this like.
Wait. Can I correct you there? Your name's on the lease, his isn't. So he didn't leave your apartment?
Yes.
All right. Just wanted to clarify that. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. So he didn't leave my apartment.
Well, why? Yeah. What was that about? Was it just COVID and you were
I think he
nice,
thought we were going to get back together. Because he had already done this pattern of behavior before. This is going to make people sad or like whatever. Some of these things are it's just sad. Like looking back at like past Lindsay, you probably look at your past self and you're like, aw, like, oh, little Courtney, like little Lindsay, like, oh, sorry, dude. Sorry you had to experience this. But he ignored me. We're going to talk sexual health. I had bacterial vaginitis, had no idea what was going on with my body at all. I didn't understand. I didn't know, like, the things you look for, like the types of odor, like that fishy smell. I didn't know what was going on. And also it was painful. So like some people, that's just like, it makes intercourse painful. And at the time I was on steroids because they thought I had, there was like a lot of other medical things happening at the same time.
Is this kind of tying into your diagnosis for herpes and like your experience with health professionals?
No, at that point I had already known. I disclosed to him at the very beginning, so I already knew that I had herpes then.
Got it.
And he was like, okay. So okay, this is the other thing. The disclosure with him went fine. It wasn't until at the end that he was like angry and upset, and that he agreed, consented to whatever. I was also taking antivirals, Valtrex. I don't know if there are others, but no, this was just another example of like, I didn't know what was going on. He was upset that we weren't like being intimate, and then he didn't talk to me for 3 days, and I was clearly in a depression. I didn't know what was happening. I tried to talk to him, and then finally he told me like that he was upset because we hadn't been intimate and that I needed to fix whatever was going on. But like, and that was the first time, to answer your question, that was the first time I was going to break up with him, and that was like right before Christmas, and then we didn't break up until the following June.
Can we talk real quick? Let's talk here. All right. So you are emotionally intelligent, you are educated, you are you know like relationship stuff. You knew this was an unhealthy relationship, right?
Yeah.
And I want to like express my intention of speaking to this because I see a lot of people stay in relationships a lot longer than they need to, and not even just relationships but situations, right? When this happens, I'll leave. When this happens, I'm going to start making a plan, right? And I want to know, like, what was the change of things before you, not what was the change of things, that's a weird way of asking this question, but the question that I have is, how much better, how fast did your life get better after June when this person was out of the picture?
Oh my gosh. It was a 180. Because you're like, oh, I do like me, and other people like me, and I can be myself. Like, and this was only in emotionally, I don't even want to say abusive. Trauma's relative. It was an emotionally difficult relationship.
Can we say manipulative?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I would say manipulative. And I don't even know if he knew. And when I say like the biggest difference was insecurity, it was. I think like he, other than not liking me, I think that there were other things at play, like, weight discrepancy, like how he was viewing his own health and his own health, like physical health journey or like mental health journey.
Wait, when you say like weight disparity, was he a lot bigger than you, smaller than you? Okay.
Bigger. And I think he was watching me exercise, but he wasn't taking action. So it was like feeding into this resentment. Or we know I was going to make more money than he was when I came out of my program. And I think that bothered him. Like,
how old was he? Was he older than you?
Only by a year.
Okay.
So I guess we were like mid-20s. We were both mid-20s, early mid-20s. And mid to late. So I think it was like, or maybe he was a couple years older. His peers were also having kids. So like he was just on a different track than most of the people that most of my peers were still in school, or they were advancing their careers, or like none of them were having kids yet. Not many, where like most of his peers were. So he was like drawing a lot of comparisons in that way. Yeah. And so I think it was like those insecurities. And then when I would ask him about mental health, or I would ask him about physical health, it was like a sore spot. And so then I was like, back to if that person's not going to grow with you, and they're going to stay stagnant, like, or they have like different interests. Like, I have nothing against video gaming, but I can't tell you how happy I was when I learned Alex was not interested. That was like not how he chose to spend his external time. I want to preface for those listening though, Alex was already like a parent. So I like, your value, not that you can't game and still be a parent, but like your values change, or your perspectives change, or the way you're interested in investing time. Like, sometimes parenthood is like a shift for that. And I think for Alex, like his focus was like spending time with his daughter, right? That was that I, yeah. So, yeah.
All right. And so we see now that insecurity, I'm kind of thinking about all of the useful aspects of this for anybody, right?
Yeah.
Insecurity is a massive red flag, and you can
Yes.
recognize insecurity because when you poke at a thing, if there's resistance to it versus an acceptance or a curiosity to it. It sounds like
Yes.
Alex, your now husband, is receptive to any sort of identification of insecurity or something that you might see within him. Like, hey, I noticed that you do this. What's that
Yes.
about? And he's like, oh, tell me more. Oh, I didn't.
Yeah.
A lot of the times we don't even know we do stuff, right?
Exactly.
So you
Yes.
can be someone
Yes.
who's secure and just unaware of an insecurity, and then when you identify that insecurity, and here's where the growth comment comes in, you're willing to address it. It's not like growth is not an up thing. You don't have to do more. You don't have to make more money. You don't have to have more stuff. When we talk about growth, we're speaking at more of an expansive space, not limited, not isolated, not just like containing yourself in this isolated, realm of perspective. There's
Yes.
more to it. Growth is more outward. And I think too, in order for you to be willing to expand, you also have to have like some depth to you as well, right? Like the deeper the roots, the taller the tree. And the taller you want the building to be, the deeper you have to go underground. So these are ways to identify emotional availability, security in a partner, emotional maturity as well, because that's where it seems like this conversation's going, is like the big difference with insecurity is how someone's able and willing to address those sort of emotions that come up there versus how someone who is more secure, they're like, oh, okay, well, tell me more. I'm curious about that.
Or you may not know. And like, this was just the most recent relationship before Alex, right? It was just like the comparison. So like at the beginning, like I said, the disclosure went fine. There was like a lot of acceptance. There was a lot of like, okay, like, thank you for sharing with me. There was a lot of kindness. And I think it was like, it wasn't until you get to know someone a little deeper that those things came out. And also, like, so it was like, it was a slow burn of like realizing like, oh, we're not compatible and we're not working. And when it's the hardest is when there isn't an event. When it is this like, they didn't really do anything wrong, but you just know, like, maybe it is like they don't want to grow with you, whatever that looks like. Maybe it's like you point something out and they're defensive. I also want to be clear, you don't have to be secure to get into the next relationship. Like, it's a work in progress. Like, I'm still insecure about so many things.
I want to thank you for saying that, because I think people, just going back to the thing about waiting until things are right before I do the thing that I actually really want to do, you don't have to do that. You don't have to be secure in order to be in a secure relationship, because these are things that you have to learn. You have to develop the skills of being in a relationship. I have talked to a lot of people who think that they need to go off and be on their own and be single, and I always say, like, the better you get at practicing being single or practicing dating, the better you get at it. If you're someone who wants to be in a relationship, the only way to get better at being in a relationship is to be in a relationship. And people like to focus on and lock in on the dating component of it. Well, it's not the right person. And there's a lot of times, like, initially, there are things that you're going to bump heads over, and we have so much ready access to our next potential partner, given dating sites, given the internet, Instagram, social media, that so many people are unwilling to look at that conflict, and how you resolve conflict with a person is going to really also speak to investment as well as long-term compatibility. If we can, bump heads and resolve that, we can take the world on together.
Yes. And you're probably going to have some, if you've had negative experiences in other relationships, conflict is going to be scary. For me, it was scary. For Alex, it wasn't scary. For me, I was like, oh no, it's over. I'm being left. Whatever my own things that I brought into here, right? And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, it's not how this works. Like, we need to be able to have these conversations, uncomfortable conversations. We're going to have a lot of uncomfortable conversations. And like, before we even got too deep, I mentioned he had a daughter. When we met, she was 4. So like he even had reservations and hesitations because he was like, this is the first long-term relationship that I'm feeling good about. And he was like, all of these things feel like green flags and it feels good, but there's something that is like, he's like, I don't know if it's my own fear of he's like, I don't know what it is, but there's like there's something holding me back. And so I need you to know that this has nothing to do with you. This is like me trying to work through this because this feels good. And I remember being like, thank you. And it hurt, but I was like, I'm glad you said that. Thank you. And I was like, if you still don't know when we've been together I don't remember what the time frame was, but I was like, I put my therapist hat on. I'm not a therapist, but I put this like external Lindsay hat on. And I was like, if you still feel this way by this month, I think I said 8 or 9 months or something. I was like, let's like call it. And then afterward, he was like, thank you for giving me the space. Thank you for giving me the time. Thank you for staying. Because his expectation wasn't that I was going to stay. Yeah, he was like his expectation wasn't, I want you to wait for me. It was like, this is where I'm at, and I understand if you need to go.
All right, I would like to, I want to like really
He's so great.
Drill that home, right? That was amazing. Not just, his greatness, but like your greatness in this man, historically men are not really allowed to have their emotions. And he was able to express, feeling uneasiness, something that he couldn't really describe, right? Like, I'm not all the way there yet. And this doesn't mean like things are over. Like that communication skill was very, I can only imagine how hard, hard for you to hear that, but you put your therapist hat on, you might have been dying on the inside and, rolling around like, no.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
you were able to go, okay, let's think about this clearly. Like, this is someone who I likes me, they communicated something with me, and that wasn't something that you were able to walk away from. I can't imagine how many people would have walked away at that point because they would have heard, oh, this person doesn't like me a lot or enough. I can find someone else who probably likes me more. Now, I don't want to say that that's like an inappropriate thing all the time, but you were connected enough to him as well as yourself to know, all right, here's my boundary. My boundary is going to be that if we are still doing whatever this is at 8, 9 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever it would have been, then here's what I need. So he expressed, his need, boundary, for himself. You were able to meet him with that. And a lot of people don't know how to do that. A lot of people might take offense or go get defensive or start attacking him, or there could have been some more of this happening. But even the way that you presented needs to one another was met with such grace by both parties. So I just want to give you some props for that too.
I don't know, like I said, I'm still insecure and I'm still struggling. If we can get in like, if we have time and we get into like step parenting and the pregnancy of it all, but like there was like, so there was some moment of clarity. I don't even know what it is. Like, if you're like taking care of somebody that's sick, there was some sort of like stoicism or like meditation, Lindsay, that was just like, okay, like I need to separate myself from this because if I am in it too deep, it's gonna feel like a rejection. My biggest thing I've worked through is this fear of rejection. It's like a constant, continuing like piece that comes up. I don't know if everybody's like a family systems theory person, but like my therapist and I think about the inside of my head like inside out, and fear of rejection is like a constant character. They're like always like around being like, oh, see, like whatever, it's a protector, right? They're like all of these things that you develop are like trying to protect who you are as a person. So yes, it was. I don't know why I had such clarity in that moment, and why these other pieces or these other insecurities were quiet for a bit.
Well,
But it helped.
that's what it's supposed to be like. I don't
Yeah.
think that we really have a lot of healthy relationships modeled to us. So when you have these moments of clarity, I think that that really does come from being present. There's an inner knowing of
Yes.
our nervous systems responding to each other, right? And when you know
Yes.
that you want this kind of relationship and you behave in that way of the person who wants this kind of relationship, right? Like, I don't know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that you were ever like, oh, I'm so glad that relationship's over. I'm going to go date as many people as possible to get over this last relationship so that I can be ready to be in my next relationship. I imagine that you ended that relationship and maybe you were ready for, like, hey, I know what I want. And I'm not
I actually
going
took a break in between.
a full break, like no dating.
Yeah, I was I don't know, I was in school. I was trying to figure. I didn't like myself anymore.
Oh,
I
you
got to
didn't.
the point where didn't I had to start over
Hold on. So
of this self building
you
in
didn't like
between.
you didn't like yourself anymore. In addition to the person you were dating not liking you, like you
Yeah.
liked yourself with that person, but you didn't like yourself without that person. Is that it?
It was more, he did a great job of breaking me down because of his own feelings about himself, that I was like, I didn't really like me either. I had to relearn to be myself and be, oh, you're constantly, punished might be a strong word, but you're constantly eye rolled or scoffed at by the silly things that make you you, or the things that making little songs, or walking around and dancing. What you had to or talking to my cats. I had to relearn how to just be with myself. And then I think I dyed my hair blue, which didn't stay. It sucked. It was my hair's dark, so it was this cool tint. And then I got a compliment. I got hit on by a waiter at a restaurant because things are still opening up. It was post COVID. I was like, oh, maybe I'll jump on an app. Maybe I'll see what happens. And then I matched with Alex 3 weeks later.
Oh, y'all met on a dating app? Which one?
Hinge.
Okay, Hinge. I noticed that people are having more success with Hinge. Like Tinder has a reputation, Bumble, yeah, kind of.
It was the fact. It was the fact thing. It was we got to be. It was nerdy. I'm nerdy in different ways. I'm anime nerdy and also academia nerdy. I'm all of the whatever. Alex is straight up nerdy, astronomy, physics, talking to me about the world's phenomenon nerdy. I'm not quite. I'm a different. But one of my facts was about the mantis shrimp, and that they can punch with the speed. I don't know if you know what a mantis shrimp is, but they can punch with the speed of a 22 caliber bullet, such that it displaces water. And so when they punch a crab's arm or something, it is a double impact. That was the fact that he commented on and was I did a deep dive. They are really cool. That was so I think Hinge's questions allow you to add authenticity to your profile in a way that others don't.
As fast as 51 miles per hour?
Yeah. Yeah. They have these Edward bowling ball hands, which I got from a YouTube video, the phrase.
Yo, this is crazy. And this is a
they're
shrimp.
Intense.
It's a shrimp.
Yeah.
And
they're very colorful.
So I got it pulled up. I'm gonna watch this later. I'm curious to see I want to watch it fight something, but
that was the
so
fact
cool.
that got Alex to comment on my profile.
It's so cool because it's it creates shockwaves that serves as a follow-up strike. What?
Yeah, it's a double. It's like anime shit. It's the double punch.
That's what I was thinking. Okay. So y'all matched off of that kind of fact. So this was a connection that I'm sure obviously there was some physical attraction between both of you, but
yes.
that you putting yourself out there, you being who you are, you're a nerd. This thing that you were made to be insecure about from your previous relationship actually was something that someone else found to be fascinating and attract you to one another. And I want to just sort of speak to this thing about you could have completely changed who you were. You didn't like yourself after your last relationship because that
Mm.
person broke you down. What if you listened to that person who was wrong for you and you were like, well, I'm going to stop talking through movies. I'm going to stop being a nerd. I'm going to stop. And you just cut off all of these aspects of yourself based on a past relationship, that you become a new person who still isn't genuine to who you are, and then you go into dating and relationships. Let's say you put that up there because there was a slip in authenticity, right? You put that fact out
Yeah.
there, and then you match with Alex, and then you're like in, oh, I don't like myself mode. And you're like, no, you're a nerd. Get off my page, nerd. You know, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you could have missed out. And I think a lot of people do that. They make changes to themselves in relation to what someone who wasn't for them made them, when really,
Yes.
like, who you are is just who you are, and it's a matter of aligning with and finding the kinds of people who accept that, who see you, who, celebrate you, support you, and also maybe even challenge you.
Yes. I think I got lucky in my personality. I've never been a good liar. There's something about me that is like what I'm feeling is always on my face. And so like I think I don't know if I was constantly told that as a kid too, but I think I've struggled with inauthenticity. So I would just like shut down. Like what would happen was like I don't think everyone goes through phases of like, well, I don't share that fact with that person because of judgment, fear of judgment or whatever. Like, I think that is like independent than, you know, knowing yourself. There's like this fear of judgment piece. And then there's like so you know who you are, you just don't tell people, or you don't like reveal those pieces. And then there's the whole other side where you're showing people a front that you think they're going to be interested in. I think I was always bad at that.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, where does neurodiversity is like a newer term, and some of the like quirks and things that you just kind of described, like, would you consider yourself to be a neurodivergent person?
I've actually thought about this because of my background in psychology and my interest in it. I don't know. I mean, I have a mood disorder. I think like because neurodivergent is so broad, I'm probably somewhere on some sort of like spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I've always had a high emotional IQ. So I've always like read people well and understood social interactions. And sometimes, depending on where you're at in that neurodivergent scale, you struggle with like understanding social cues. So I think I was like hyper attentive to those, probably as like a protective mechanism, or like if I'm paying attention, like I can like intervene or evaluate. I feel like everybody's probably on this spectrum of neurodivergent. I feel like everyone is there.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly where I'd fall.
Yeah, it made me think about it when you mentioned like high emotional IQ. You said a few things. I was like, I wonder if this fits into the conversation at all. But like, I think people think of neurodivergence as like limiting in some capacities, but I think it might be a lot more expansive too, right? Like, people can also make a person who's on the spectrum, or defined as weird or quirky, right? Some of those things might just be expressions of neurodivergence that aren't necessarily like a limiting thing, but it's actually something that may intimidate other people, right? So you're highly emotionally intelligent. You point out, hey, I noticed that you always do this thing with your right finger right after you know what I'm saying? Like, you can tell when somebody's lying, you know what they're feeling. And I've been encouraged to look into this, and I read a book called, oh my God, is it Divergence? There's a book I read, but anyway, like, I want to speak to this just a little bit, to just say, like, don't change who you are. Like, there's no, not you, I'm speaking to like the audience.
Oh no, I know, collectively.
Okay. Like, there's no need to, I would say, like, I don't know that there's really any need for me to like express this, but like, this isn't a normal thing. And I think that the longer I'm in this space and the more like fun I'm having, the more passionate I am, the more like driven by purpose I am, this is not normal for somebody to operate things in the way that I am. It's not normal for somebody to be open about their herpes diagnosis and
Yes.
to have such high expressions of empathy that there's a complete disregard for, what type of reputation I might be building or how this is going to affect my grandkids when they look in the history books and they're like, oh, your great great granddad had herpes and get made fun of in school if that's still a thing. Like these.
Oh, that's
these
so
are
funny.
things
Didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, like the high empathy thing or the sensory issues. I don't know that I'm really sensitive. Go ahead.
I do have some sensory things. I've gone through this whole I have a mood disorder, and I know that sounds vague, but it's not quite bipolar, but it's not just anxiety and depression. But I'm on a mood stabilizer, and I found that helped me the most, because when I was taking just anxiety meds, I was very depressed, and vice versa. So I needed something that was traditionally given to folks that have a bipolar diagnosis. So I've tried to figure that out, and so that's been part of my tools and concepts or whatever. But then I do think it is this but I have some sensory issues. I keep getting ads about Loop. Have you seen that? Those headphones that are supposed to take out some decibels. You can still talk with them, but it kind of helps with sensory overload. They have a couple different types. They're doing great because I'm convinced I need them. I think I want some. Overstimulated. Yeah.
So as I look at this chart, I wanted to here's some things that are looking at neurodiversity. We've got honesty, sensory awareness, resilience, adaptability and empathy, innovative thinking, right? Authenticity, creativity. These are all considered on the neurodiversity, I guess, spectrum. So
doesn't that captures almost everyone?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? I don't see anything. Hyperfocus is on here. Passion is on here. But ADHD.
I did even test for ADHD. I wanted to have ADHD. I wanted it so badly because I needed an excuse why I wasn't finishing my dissertation. And I did the whole battery, and they're like, sorry, you just have depression and anxiety.
Oh.
You don't actually have anything.
I wonder how much of this is misdiagnosed. And
I'm sure.
When I look at superhero shows and the trauma made the superhero their superhero.
Oh, yes.
Batman's Batman because he watched his parents get shot in front of him, right? Superman's planet blew up. We can go down the list. But as I look at these things, I wonder if ADHD, hyperfocus, and, this creativity, if these are all things that are as a result of trauma, and then we take medications sometimes that may taper it down, or if we're misdiagnosed or we're on the wrong medication, or we're trying to bring balance to something that is already balanced for us. And this is just such a wonderful idea to play with, because so much of the conversations are on mental health, and we have so many different treatments and diagnoses for a person's mental health. But then when we get down to the emotional level, as we begin to look at those things, people say go outside, or you need to meditate or do yoga or take care of your body, right? And we start dealing with those things. You mentioned earlier, and this is why I wanted to go a little bit deeper, was that being in that relationship made you sick, right? And there's science, I'm referencing specifically Letting Go by David R. Hawkins, that speaks to emotion storing in the body, causing an imbalance, and then creating an overproduction or underproduction of something that's causing illness as a result. Is there anything that you want to speak to in regards to that?
When I have seen that, especially stress. We know that stress does all sorts of wild things. And so I'm sure that the book talked about that and emotional reactivity. When I was more speaking about being sick, I more meant I was disgusted by the idea. It made me physically want to throw up at the idea of being intimate. That was when I was okay, I really need to stop. If I can't even stomach be intimacy with this person, what am I doing? Why am I here? I hit this wall. But I have seen what you're talking about, and before we like talk about that, your note about superheroes and adversity, I don't love this phrasing, but yes, sometimes that neurodivergency or whatever it is, that hypersensitivity, that hyper awareness, these things that you're picking up that others may not be, they can be useful. People call it a superpower. Like my sister, hopefully she doesn't mind. She's like, she'll like go through phases. She's like, yeah, my therapist keeps telling me my anxiety is a superpower. That's not useful all the time, because sometimes when it's overactive, it's not. When it's doing its job and performing its function, and it's like nice and like, I don't know, I'm thinking about like yellow, green, red, like when it's like in the green zone, it is super useful. You're very like intuitive. When it's in this red zone, you're like, everyone's talking about me, everyone's focused on me. Like, you know what I mean? Like all of these pieces that make us unique, they also exist on the spectrum of usefulness. For anybody that's seen like Human Resources, like the love bug is also like the hate worm. So like you need, like when it's like being used in this like appropriate way, when it's regulated. When it's regulated, those things are very useful. It's when you're dysregulated that they work against you, or they give you information that is disconnected from reality. And so like that's why therapy or meditation or stoicism, having these tools in your toolkit to get you back from this dysregulated state to this regulated state where you're like, oh, this is reality. I'm like, here, I'm okay. Like, I feel like that has been a big part of my development.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I hope your sister doesn't mind either. But
yeah, she'll be fine.
So looking at the environments, right? So in your case, the environment with your ex, some of those things about you weren't a fit, right? And maybe that was even your nervous system communicating to you, hey, get out, this isn't appropriate. But now you're thriving, it seems like, where you are now. And this is a good transition to speaking to stepmotherhood and being in a relationship, married after an unsuccessful relationship, or what you've gone through in those past relationships. So I want to open up the floor for you to just share what you'd like to about the things that we talked about that you wanted to discuss, such as being the step parent.
Yeah, well, I texted you earlier. Today's a funny day because in this stage of my pregnancy, I've been having, I know that they're not real. Like, all your feelings are valid. All of your feelings are real. But it's almost like I have this, like, shoulder devil on my, like, shoulder angel devil situation because I'm feeling alone and isolated. But I have so much evidence that I'm not, really. So I was like, today's going to be interesting because I cried a lot last night and I'm crying a lot today. And it's hard to parse apart, like, what is hormones and what is a need. But I think, like, now the things that come up as insecurities, they're still the same players, but they're manifested differently. Like, I feel secure in the longevity of the relationship because we have, like, a positive communication style, but there's still, there's still conflict, or there's still, like, disagreements, or there's still, like, changes. And Alex's, like, ability to pick up on social cues and, like, really minor things, that's not his skill set. That's not what he's good at. I have to be very explicit. Like, I'll, like, give him eyes around, like our daughter, and he'll be like, I don't know what that means. Like, I need you to tell me exactly what you mean, or I'll try to whisper something, but he's, like, partially deaf in one ear. So I'm, like, trying to subtly communicate, like, bedtime needs to be earlier, or, like, I don't know, whatever it is. And he's like, what? Like, out loud. And then she looks at both of us and is like, what?
You know how kids are. Kids are, like, intuitive. She knows what's going on. She's like, oh, you trying to put me to bed early? Why?
Yeah, and she's like a mirror. I think a lot of kids are like this. Like, whatever energy you bring in, she, like, reflects it back at you. So, like, sometimes I got to get out of my headspace and be like, I can't bring her this. Like, she's going to, like, if you're down or whatever, it's not your responsibility to always make sure that your kid's okay. I'm saying if you can recognize that that's how they emotionally process, that they're a mirror of you, it's okay to like fake it sometimes. Like that initial reaction and be like, hey, how's it going? I'm so excited you're here. Like greeting like a puppy. Like my friend just introduced her very reactive dog to me. She's like, you just got to be like, hi buddy, how are you? Like he does great. He's been through training and all of that. She's like, but like it's that first interaction. And as soon as he's like, oh, okay, you like me, I like you, we're good. I feel like kids are like that. Like you have to like meet them with the energy that you're like trying to get, because if you come in like really cautious or insecure, they're going to be like, you don't know what's going on. I don't like that. Like they like pick it up.
Like, I can't trust you.
Yeah, exactly. They're like they pick up like what's happening.
Yeah.
And they're like but it's gotten better. Our relationship is more stable. We were thoughtful about how I became a disciplinarian. I was always in charge of my body and like my boundaries. But then it was like, when do we introduce you as like we're co-parents? Like what you say also goes. Or I think at one point Alex was like, hey, I need you to help me with schedule and routine. I hate being the one that's like, okay, we can't do this anymore. We really need to go to bed, guys. It like makes me feel like I'm the only bad guy and that you guys just get to play. So we went through these stages of conversations and things are good now. We have, I think a lot of it is like, we're like in an established home. She's like settled at mom's. We have a good co-parenting relationship with mom. Like all of that, I think lends itself well to the success of the relationship. I think my biggest struggle was like wanting time and attention. And how do you do that and balance it and be thoughtful about a child's needs and like making sure that the relationship is still what's first, even if a kid's around all the time. Like I've been told like the parent relationship has to come first, and then that feeds into like everything else. And of course, if she has a need that need needs to be met, it's very different than like deprioritizing the relationship on the whole, because you guys are going to be together after they're gone. Like that, like they're going to go, hopefully they're going to go off and do their own thing. But yeah, it was like figuring out that balance and expressing when I needed more time, or like when I was feeling lonely, or like this time we like just talked about it. We've just happened that we had 3 weekends in a row. And so usually after that, and it's summer, so that's a lot of like splitting days and trying to get attention or getting to camps or whatever. And so he's like, I think we need a reset. We need a date. We need to check in. We need a date that's just the two of us. And that's built into our schedule now, but it won't be when the new baby comes, right? So like that'll bring its own challenges, because they'll be around all the time, where we have built-in time that we, can plan a date now. I don't know. So it's been a whirlwind, but it's been mostly joy, and it's been easy because it's been the right person.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Easy is relative, right?
I mean,
now I feel this was very therapeutic for me as well, by the way. I needed this today.
I appreciate that. I'm glad I was able to extend that to you. I want to just thank you and appreciate your willingness to go to the depths at which we've gone to, revisiting the past relationships. I know you 16 weeks pregnant, and emotions and hormones are probably all over the place, but it really does mean a lot to me that you were willing and able to come on here and just share this experience, because I think there's so much more here than what I selfishly wanted, which was, hey y'all, I know what the fuck I'm talking about, so hit me up when you need help disclosing. But also you've given a lot of context to relationships, and just something that I don't know that I've really been able to consistently put into words, but be who you are and date people who, I always say this, I like people who like what I like. That tells me a lot about you. If you like what I like, I already know a lot of things about you, and now we can connect a little bit more, if that's something that we choose to do, if we choose to go about that. All my closest friends, we have either played sports and we've gotten a lot of those characteristics out of it. We connect over playing Call of Duty. We play or watch anime and superhero stuff. That's probably all my friends now. And also caring about fitness and getting more into spirituality, like these are the people that I spend the most time with now. And I didn't do that before. There's this phrase in neurodivergence, which is masking, where you have to, put on this mask in order to exist in the normal world. But you can do that, or you can take that leap of identifying an environment that is more conducive to who you are. It's so important that we nurture our own nature, and that our nature nurtures the nature of whoever it is that we're with and sharing space and presence with. So I want to thank you for nurturing the nature of this organization with your presence.
Oh, I want to put a caveat in. I do like watching gaming, by the way. That had just become a particularly difficult thing because I was like, let's engage, let's do stuff.
Yes.
And it was like, that was like a tension. Like, that's very different than enjoying a hobby that you like to do, that you have a connection with. I just want to say that.
Yeah.
But also, like, yes, this has been great. Getting to know you has been great. Being able to work with you has been great. Like, I'm excited for all the things you have ahead. And also, like, we have to get into our anime conversation, too, because I was like, I want to debrief with you about the end of Attack on Titan.
Oh, yeah, we can do that. We don't have to do that here. Yeah, y'all go watch Attack on Titan.
No, I know. This is not the space.
We'll have spoilers. You won't like us if you haven't seen it already.
So good. Yeah. But yeah, this has been, I'm so grateful that I messaged you all those times ago and that you helped me with this first disclosure and that it like led to this like cool full circle moment.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, so we're at 1 hour. Stay on for me, please. I'm gonna go ahead and close this out, and then we can talk for a little bit just to check in and see how this was for you and everything. So that concludes this episode of Something Positive for Positive People. Please like, rate, review, share, subscribe to this podcast. Check out the offerings tab, the events tab to see what's going on. We have the September 29th Safe Sex Expo at Hit Me Up Space in NYC. We also have a disclosure workshop, how to talk about your STI status and navigating herpes dating workshop that will be hosted at Hit Me Up Space in New York City as well, but there's also virtual options. So yeah, get your tickets. That's at the offerings tab of SPFPP.org. And yeah, we're doing things. We got funding to provide our first simulation to a healthcare organization. We're in communication about that, organizing what that's going to look like. We also got funding, I believe, to do some research, which, if we do that, hopefully we'll be able to see Lindsay's name on it. I got to get the final details for that back to me. And like I said, I'm only wearing the same shirt today because this interview was done after another one, and you're going to see me wear this in a next interview if that person lets me record it. But if we don't do video for that one, ignore that I said that. All right, that's it. Till next time. And like I said, Get Selfed is the other Instagram where we're putting together emotional wellness resources for men. So for all y'all ladies listening who got dudes in your life who need this content, who are deathly afraid of somebody finding out that they have herpes, hit me up. Like, send them to Get Selfed Instagram. Send them to, it'll be getselfed.org. I'm buying the URL today when I'm done doing my recordings so that I can get that going. That's going to be a nonprofit organization. So I'm going to be running 2 nonprofits. Y'all can call me Courtney 2 Nonprofits Brain. All right, till next time, y'all. Peace out.